Have you ever been live or on TV or something where something takes place and you are just like freaking out because you're like, did you see that? Wow. Did you miss that? That was great. That was incredible. Like some touchdown of some team that you're rooting for. And it was one of those stretch out, reach, tip of the toe, backwards, right? Or some guy in baseballs make the incredible catch at the wall. Or maybe just the opposite and just hit the wall. We've got all sorts of reasons that we have these like wow moments in our life. So it could be like in sports or like a part of the movie where I was talking with Kim the other day. We watched a Jurassic Park movie a couple days ago, and she said she was working in a theater when the first one came out with their surround sound, and she said it was so much fun to stand in the back of the theater and watch people engage with Jurassic Park for the very first time with the very first movie. And those times where the dinosaur, they build the suspense and then boom, and out it comes, and you're like, you just about fall through the floor. These are these wow moments. I can't believe that. Or my grandfather, he's with Jesus now, but man, I remember when I was a kid, and he tells stories. He grew up in Eastern Oregon, and he tells stories of, I don't know why, these are his stories, but for fun, they'd go tip outhouses. That was their good time, right? So they'd go find outhouses and tip them, right? Turn them over. And his one story is like, I remember we tipped that over, and Ernest J., he just like fell on in, wow, that would be a kind of a cool moment to watch some guy go down into the outhouse. That'd be a little weird. How about your child's first steps? Your child's first words? Those oh, wow moments. My neighbor, we recently bought a house, and he had 65-inch TVs everywhere. 2 outside, 1 near their hot tub, 1 just near and then 1 in their bedroom, and then 1 in the living room, and then 1 in more of a sitting room, and a huge one in the garage. And we're looking through the house, before we buy, and we're trying to make a decision. I'm like, what is the deal with this guy and televisions? But you got it? He's a sports nut. And so he'd have the game going in every house. He could see it from anywhere that he was on the property, and he just didn't want to miss the oh, wow moment, right? He didn't want to be the guy who goes, oh, I missed the time, He wanted to get it. There are a few of those moments in the Gospels. A few of those times where Jesus turns to his disciples and goes, what, did you see that? Wow, that's incredible. There's a couple of those, and when Jesus says something like that, when he turns to his disciples and goes, yeah, I hope you saw this, it makes me curious about what made him get so excited. What caught Jesus' attention like that? Why did he get so just thrilled with what was going on in that moment that he turns to his disciples because he needs to point this out? What's going on there? What was such a big deal to him? So I want to talk about 2 of these moments with you this morning. I want to compare them. I want to see what Jesus is trying to get us to pay attention to and what he sees and what he gets that would make me go, oh, yeah, wow, okay, I get it. Yeah, let's pray, please. Jesus, you are so incredible. Like we say, you are holy and wonderful and amazing. And as we look at these moments here from your life and the chronicles of your ministry, would you begin to speak to our hearts this morning about what it was that got you so excited? What was it that made you just want to point that out to everybody around you and make sure that we see it too? And we want to learn from that today. As we go from this place and we move forward with our ministry, Jesus, we want to take and carry that with us. So open our eyes and open our hearts to do that, I pray. Amen. Next week, Kim and I get the privilege of spending not next week, not this week. We get the privilege of going to the coast. We're going to Pismo Beach, where she grew up. Now, I've passed through there once before, but she is so excited. She's like, okay, so this was my first job, and here is our house. Have you ever done that, right? We go to the place where, the person significant to you has grown up, and you got to take the big, city tour. So I'll go put on my really, happy to be here face, and, go around the city with her and say, oh, okay, so that's where, all right, oh, your high school? Okay, cool, love it, excellent, wonder, And so we're going to get to do that and tour around her hometown, and that'll be exciting. She's excited, I know. I will be. Jesus had a moment like this with his disciples. He grew up in the town of Nazareth. He's all the way up until he starts his ministry, he's got a place where, he called home. And he had brothers and sisters. He had his mom, his parents were there. He learned carpentry, a trade there. It was his hometown. And so at one point in their ministry, they are going to make this trip to his hometown. And I can see Jesus just being excited, like, okay, guys, here in a bit, we're going to take a road trip here, and we're going to go to Nazareth. And I can't wait to take my ministry there so that I get to see, like all these guys, I better use Jewish names here. Abraham, we'll check him out. And then there's Joseph, we'll go see him. And Malachi, I grew up with that guy. He's so funny. And you'll get to see where I grew up. And hey, guys, okay. So his ministry team is going to go to Jesus' hometown. And you can imagine how excited he might be. Now, the Bible doesn't say that, but I have enough life experience, like what's going to happen next week with Kim, to know we're like that, right? We get excited to go back home again, so to speak, and show it off a bit, This is a part of my story. This is part of my life. So Jesus says, let's do that. So they go to this homegoing. So this is our first story this morning, is what happens when Jesus goes home, goes to his hometown, his childhood home. And so we're going to start in Matthew, this first story, Matthew 13, 53 to 58. And let's begin there. When Jesus had finished doing some teaching time, telling stories, illustrations, he left that part of the country and he returned to Nazareth, his hometown. Right? So here we are. You can imagine some excitement. They come walking into town. He had only been gone a few years. He had, we're not told quite when the time frame here is for this particular story, but his ministry was only about 3.5 years, the Bible tells us, and so he hadn't been gone that long. So he's excited to go be back and see his guys, and he gets to introduce his disciples to his people. So in verse 54, we see this, and when he taught there in the synagogue, so he goes to the synagogue where they meet for their church, and he begins to teach. He wants to show off his ministry. He wants his brothers and sisters and mother to see what's been going on in his life for the last year or so. So he gets there, and then in verse 54, it says, he taught there in the synagogue, and everyone was amazed and said, where did he get all this wisdom and the power to do miracles? All right, here we are. Very cool. Hometown kid makes good, right? And people are astonished. They love the fact that this guy they know is got this popular ministry. And as he speaks to them, they're like, wow, okay. And things seem to be tracking at this point, okay? We all follow, and everything seems to be going good. Let's move on to the next verse, though. And it says here in verse 55, it gets a little odd. It says, then they scoffed. Something happens. There's a plot twist here. And something spins, turns, and now this attitude of amazement turns into this rejection of this homegrown son. And so they begin to scoff, and they begin to say things like this. What now? Hold on a moment. He's just the carpenter's son. And we all know Mary, his mother, and his brothers, James, Joseph, Simon, Judas. All his sisters live right here still among us. Where did he learn all these things? And that's not a question of amazement. That's a question of scorn. Who does he think he is? Where did he learn this stuff? I mean, come on. And they were deeply offended and refused to believe in him. Everything just went pear-shaped. Everything just went sideways. Jesus is excited. He's at his hometown. Everybody should be going. And at first, everything seems to be clicking, tracking. And now everything seems to have gone south. Who do you think you are? I mean, I remember when you were just this tall. And, running around and doing stuff. And now you come here, and you're starting to tell us that you know all this stuff and do all these, that you're some sort of big shot now? I mean, that's what's happening here. And that they were offended. You could see them saying things like, dude, who do you think you are? Really? Coming home, showing off? Thinking you're all something? We know who you really are. Right? Isn't that what's being said here? You're just that kid that grew up here. You just used to live in that house right down the block, man. I've known you your whole life, and you ain't all that. I mean, I remember one time you built a table. It was lopsided. It wasn't even balanced. Jesus was sinless, but doesn't mean that he was didn't have to learn his trade. And so you take things like that, and you begin to think, and somebody else sitting next to you goes, yeah, who do you think you are? And that's what's happening. It's that, I've seen you grow up. I've seen your childhood. I've seen your young adulthood. I know more about you than you know about you. I used to change those diapers, right? And our perspective begins to shift. And they were deeply hurt and offended and wouldn't believe. Talk about a disappointment. I could see Jesus, who at first is so thrilled, go to his guys and just say, dudes, I don't know what's happened here. I mean, I thought this was going to be a good idea, coming home. I thought this was going to be a great idea, being back here. Guys, I'm so sorry. I didn't want this to be the way it went here. Jesus takes them someplace he's excited about, and it's, oh, what a letdown. If we go back into the scripture, it says this, then Jesus told his disciples, a prophet is honored everywhere except in his hometown and among his own family. And he did only a few miracles because of their unbelief. Now, I started this off by saying, where's the wow, right? That there's a wow to be had. What's the wow here? I think the wow here is Jesus saying, I'm shocked. They have no faith. They're too familiar. Familiarity has led to contempt, not faith. What's happening here? I'm shocked. Now, what's Jesus talking about? We need to understand, and this is kind of where we're going to go today, is what are we talking about with this faith thing? If Jesus was looking for faith, if that's a part of the way that he operated in his ministry, he is now at a space where he can do very little ministry, very little miracles. There's nobody who's going to believe in him. He ain't planting a church here. Let's say that. And so what's going on with this faith? Well, I guess in one way, we could think of faith simply as trust or belief. So when I talk on or teach on faith, it's helpful to people to understand that these things are similar. They're related together, right? Because we hear this word a lot. This is a church word, a Bible word. We come across it constantly. What is faith? In fact, we're told in Romans that we are saved by grace through faith. What are we talking about here? What is this faith? Well, one way we can easily describe it is as trust or belief. And it's not just important, actually, to have a relationship with God, to be saved by God, it takes faith. It's not just nice, it's not just important, it's actually essential. So really putting our hands around, our minds around the idea of, like, what are we really talking about here, this faith thing? Where Jesus was so disappointed at his hometown because they had no faith. What would he say of me? Would I have faith? Do I know enough about what faith is to know I have it? Enough belief? How much belief or trust? Where does that fit? How does that really work? And so I think that we can begin to try to understand today, hopefully, what faith is. That it's an essential item on our journey with Jesus. It's like a vehicle that allows us to get where we're going to go. If I'm going to go to the other side of the lake, I've got to have a boat. If I'm going to get to God, I've got to have faith. If I'm going to fly to Phoenix in a day, I'm going to have a plane. It's going to be essential. It's the tool, the thing that I'm going to use to get where I go. What is faith? Hebrews 11:6 says, I'm going to give you a couple of verses here, and it's impossible to please God without faith, this idea that we're talking about today, trust, belief. Anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists and that he rewards those who sincerely seek him. That was Nazareth's problem. That was his hometown's problem. They couldn't do this. They struggled to believe. Well, you're just that kid I grew up with. Mark 11:24 says this, I tell you, you can pray for anything, and if you believe and you've received it, it's going to be yours. The corollary there is, if you don't believe, you won't receive. And he could do very little miracles in Nazareth. This is essentially what happened in Nazareth. Jesus went to show them his life and ministry, and they don't believe. And instead of believing, they minimized it. You are just this. Why didn't the people, they knew Jesus. Do you get that? They grew up with him, many of them. They were there as adults, aunts, uncles. They know his sister, they know his family. They know who he is. Get it? But they don't believe him. There's a difference. Why didn't the people in his hometown not have faith? They really didn't know him. They only knew about him. And so they couldn't take their belief anywhere because they minimized who he was. Let's go to the second story here this morning, rolling on here. The lesson from the second story, from this story is knowing about Jesus is not faith. Knowing about Jesus, is not faith. I know about Jesus, but I also know Jesus. And that's where we're going to go here. And this second story comes from Matthew 8:5-13. And let's dive into this one. Again, they're traveling, him and his disciples. It said they returned to Capernaum. A Roman officer then comes and pleads with him. Lord, my young servant lies in bed, paralyzed in terrible pain. And Jesus says, I will come and heal him. Now, let's lay some groundwork here for the second story. We're not talking about a Jew. We're talking about a Gentile. We're talking about somebody who has not been a part of the Jewish synagogues, didn't grow up hearing about God, didn't grow up hearing and reading the scrolls in temple. He was an outsider, comes from Rome, comes with an army, comes to occupy, comes to be there in charge of a garrison. He is a Gentile, and he does not really understand Jewish customs other than what he needs to do to interface to keep the peace. He's a soldier. He's a foreigner. He's a commander and a leader responsible for Roman interest in Israel. And if anyone should not care about knowing Jesus, it's this guy. Why would he care about just some other Jew going around doing his thing, trying to make money on the side? Why would he care about this guy, even if people flock to him and look out? As long as there is peace in the Roman Empire, he's good and he's happy, because that's his job. That's why he's there. That's it. But he had some Jewish servants. It tells us he had a Jewish servant boy who was dangerously sick. And somewhere along the line, he cared for this young man. And so he's going to want to take care of this servant of his. We assume that somebody in his position is going to have enough wealth to try to find doctors, to try to find ways of healing, getting him healed. But nothing's working. So now this centurion, this outsider, this foreigner, who's trained in tactics and strategy, says there must be a way. And this little kid and people that live around our garrison talk about this guy, Jesus, who can heal people. Like, I've been hearing about it. He starts to find out more about it. I want to do something here. And so he realizes that the answer that's going to be his servant's healing and his servant's getting better lies in this man that he has nothing really to do with. But he goes to him anyway and seeks Jesus out. And he finds Jesus, and Jesus responds positively. Yeah, man, let's go. Let me do this thing with you. That's a great story. But it takes a turn here. And in here in the next verse, in verse 8, it says this. But the officer said, so he's there, and he's talked to Jesus, and he said, hey, I need your help. And Jesus has said, yeah, let's go. And the guy says, you know what? I don't need you to come. He says, Lord, I'm not even worthy to have you come. He didn't consider his position of military might and identity as a leader, as a centurion. He said, I'm not even worthy to have you come into my home. But I know that if you just say the word from where you are, my servant's going to be healed. I know this because I'm under authority of my superior officers. And I have an authority over my soldiers. And I only need to say to them, hey, go, and they go. Come, and they come. I say to my slaves, go do this, and they do it. And when Jesus heard this, he was amazed. And turning to those who were following him, he says, I tell you the truth, I haven't seen faith in all of Israel. What? What was that? He didn't just say, whew, that's a lot of faith for you. Good job, dude. For you being a military Gentile commander, soldier, all that stuff, that's pretty good. Good for you. No. He says, I have not seen this much, what's this thing we're doing today? Faith anywhere in all of Israel. No spiritual leader, no person working in a temple, no priest doing the sacrifices. Nobody has as much faith as this outsider who's never been here, who doesn't go to the temple, who doesn't study about God, and he's got more faith than all y'all. Wow! Man, I'm going to pay attention to that. What's up with this guy? That's not just a compliment. All of Israel, even the Jewish leaders, but this is a non-Jew, the soldier. Why was Jesus so amazed at his faith? Because this guy got Jesus. There was no barrier. There was nothing in his way of being able to go, I see who you are. I see exactly who you are. I get it. At least I get how it relates to me. And the idea of authority, what did he get? He got he knew his authority. Man, you're in charge of everything. Creation itself, I've heard the stories. Guys coming in saying how you calmed a storm on a lake. I've heard about all the healings that you've done. I've done my research. That's what I do as a military guy in charge of people. And you're the real deal. And you've got the real authority more than anybody. That's why I'm coming to you. And you don't need to come to my home. You just say the word, it's done. I know how this works. And Jesus is just like agape with just, oh my goodness. Man, I wish I came across more guys like you. Because I can do anything through that. Why was Jesus so amazed? Because he got to know who Jesus really is. Then Jesus said to the Roman officer, a little few verses later, sir, because you believed, it's already done. Because you believed, your servant's already healed. And that servant was healed at that very hour. Something about his belief, his faith made all the difference. But not for himself, but for that little Jewish boy who would serve him in his home. Here's the upshot. Knowing Jesus is faith that then leads to action. It's not knowing about Jesus, it's knowing him. Let me give you a couple of faith verses, and I've retranslated them, so you'll see it's in the ELP version. That's me. I've reworded them so that we can understand the difference as we try to understand faith, not just in a trust or believe context, but in a who am I trusting? Who am I believing? Who am I having faith in? It's the object of our trust, our faith, our belief. That's really what the faith is. It's the who, not the what. You following me there? And so let's look at a couple of these verses here. First one back in Hebrews. Let me reword it this way. And it is impossible to please God without knowing God, knowing Jesus. Anyone who wants to come to him must know that God exists and that he rewards those who sincerely seek him. Back to our one from before, and back in Mark 11, but re-looking at it from a relational perspective. He says, I tell you, you can pray for anything, and if you know Jesus, that he'll give it, it'll be yours. See what we're doing? We're talking about faith in terms of the object of our faith. 1 Peter 1, 8 and 9, you know him and love him, even though you have never seen him. Okay, wow, that applies to us. And though you do not see him now, you know him, and you rejoice with a glorious, inexpressible joy. The rewarding for knowing him and trusting and believing him will be the salvation of your souls. And finally, in Ephesians 2, 8 to 9, God saves you by his grace when you know him. But you can't take credit for this. It's a gift of God. Salvation is not a reward for the good things that we've done. And so none of us can boast about it. So put the stories together. Where does it take us? Here's the point. The ones who should have known him in Nazareth didn't. But the one who should not have known him did. Do you see it? That's how these work together. And you look at that and you're like, okay, the Bible is telling me that I can't just take this who is Christ for granted. I have to really, as one of our vision points is for Converge, is know Christ. It's about knowing him that activates faith. When we depart from this place and keep moving forward with where Jesus takes this church and takes us as individuals, knowing Christ and expressing that, really knowing who he is going to be a big part of what moves us forward. Because that's faith. And it only takes a small amount of knowing Jesus in me relationally. As a person with me, as one who loves me, you, to move mountains. And that's a faith that I want to have. That's a faith I would hope that you would want to have, because that is what is going to make the difference. Well, I know God can if he wants to. No, I know God can and will because he loves me. Because I know him. I wake up in the morning and start talking to him. I wake up in the night sometimes and I'm just talking to Jesus because he's just a companion with me. Something irritates me. It's so easy to go to a friend or a coworker and start to complain. We laugh because we've all done it. But do I take it to Jesus and talk to him? I want to know Jesus. I want to know him in my life. Not the facts about him that come through Scripture. I know that there are, one of the biggest surprises for me when I was earning my master's degree in seminary was how many Bible scholars are out there that know all about Jesus and yet are not saved. They do not know him. And I'm just like, how do they get it then? How do they even interpret and understand the New Testament? or the Old Testament for that matter, if they don't know him. But it's that personal relationship with Jesus that makes all of the difference in faith, because it's him I trust, and it's him I believe. And that's just my heart's cry for this message today, is that we get excited, not just about where Jesus takes us. Yes, yes, yes. But excited about knowing him so deeply and so well that going to college feels like it's just still the beginning of what God is going to do in us and through us in this city. And it's all praising Jesus. It's not about Converge, it's about Christ. It's about what we can do and he can do in people who know him, like that centurion, that outsider, the one who shouldn't have been there. You know, if you ever feel like an outsider, you're in a great spot to know Jesus and let him do something with you. It's so good. Band, if you'd come. Knowing Jesus is faith that leads to action. Because when I know him and know his heart and know his love and know what he wants and know how he loves me, how would I ever say no to anything Jesus wants for me? How would I ever say no to not wanting to know him more? Now, I know enough. Nah, it's too busy, and it was a hard year. I'm tired. 3 jobs. You know, I teach theology. I know I'm good, full up. No, man, you know how it is with relationships. You work at it, and 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 you work at it. This is not a test to be passed. This is a relationship to be grown. And what an opportunity we get to remind ourselves as we get to exit here is to enter into something new, entering into more of a relationship with the one who loves us. Through our communion time, are we reminded he died for us? In our worship or our singing time, how he is so worthy of all of our love and praise and adoration because he is so holy. Knowing Jesus is faith that leads to action. Knowing where Jesus is today, how he is working today. Dustin will go into it in the next 3 weeks in more detail, but how he has been working in you and in me in the past, and what he has in store for our future. And I for one, can't wait to see where this rolls out. Next week, when we hit a new location, have room to grow, have time to grow. And it's like, okay, Jesus, what are you doing next? I want to know you well enough to be on page with you. As we move, I want to have wow faith. I want Jesus to look and go, wow! Guys, do you see what Ed's doing now? Do you see what Converge is doing? Look at my church there in Sacramento and look what they're doing and look what I get to do through them because they know me and love me. I want that. And my heart says I want our church to know that, and Jesus just to be able to do things that we could never conceive of because of his love. So I'll leave you with these 3 questions. How do you know Jesus today? If you feel like you're just kind of like, Jesus has been ordinary instead of extraordinary, I invite you to even just take a minute right here as I pray in a minute to say, Jesus, I want to know you. I want to know you more. I want to really know who you are. How do you take your time and effort to get to do that? When do we work on our relationship with him? And then what action do we take? Good days ahead, guys, as we get into knowing Jesus more and more and more. Let me pray. Jesus, I want to know you. I wish I could stand here and declare to everybody that I got it going on. But I have to confess but I still feel like there are ways that I can know you more. And I want to. And I pray that over everyone here, that faith is activated through us, through this church, through our pastor, in our city, through all of our churches. You start a revival of relationship that cannot be stopped or quenched, because you are going to be at work through that. And Jesus, may you be able to look and go, wow, have you seen my church in Sacramento and what's happening there? Because they know me. So may that be us. And we just ask for that. In your precious name we ask for that, because we believe and trust in you, Jesus. In your precious name I pray it. Amen.